Cherie and I, a few years ago, participated in the Richmond 300 master planning process. And a part of that process, we had to go through what was called the Insights Report. One of the sheets talked about the life expectancy. And so we noticed that there was a up to 20-year life expectancy difference between neighborhoods in Southside and neighborhoods north of the river.
Wow.
And so we began to explore why this is happening. Like, why is this? And what could we do as just community members to try to help mitigate this? And so we started realizing that a lot of it came down to heat, and there are neighborhoods in Southside that are a lot hotter than other neighborhoods. And so we figured out that in order to be able to help with this, we needed to create some sort of grassroots organization that later became Southside Relief that worked to enhance our green spaces and plant trees.
And I love for people to know that it's RELEAF, relief. And I love the play on words.
Absolutely. Cherie came up with that.
I did. Excellent. Excellent. But tell me about the heat island effect.
Well, the urban heat island effect is not unique to the city of Richmond. It actually takes place all over the country, all over the world. And essentially what it is that we have urban areas because of impervious surfaces. What that means is asphalt, roads, sidewalks, all of these things that aren't green spaces, right? That actually absorbs all of this heat and it radiates it back up into the atmosphere. And so what we're talking about is in these urban centers that don't have a lot of tree canopy cover, it's just much hotter. And it can be anywhere between 15 and 20 degrees hotter in certain neighborhoods. And what that looks like for us in Southside Richmond and in other areas across Virginia is that people experience chronic illnesses. They have asthma flare-ups. They end up going to the emergency room just because of the heat.
Yes.
And something that a lot of people may not realize is that extreme heat is the number one cause of death for when it comes to natural disasters. So we think of all the devastation from hurricanes and tornadoes. And yes, those are really traumatic events, but we look at urban heat islands and this extreme heat, that too is also a disaster that's impacting people every single day.
So how did we get here?
Yeah, Peggy, that's a really good question. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we felt that it was equitable to have an organization like Southside Relief come about. Unfortunately, you know, in cities like ours, there were racist policies that allowed certain neighborhoods, I don't know if you've heard of the term redlining before, where the government actually, insurance companies and banks redlined certain neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods were deemed unvaluable and they unfortunately were neglected. And so there wasn't the great planning that came with some of the other neighborhoods with trees and being intentional about ensuring that certain spaces were shaded. And then came urban renewal, right? And that's like what, you know, folks came in and said, oh, we're going to fix these neighborhoods. And they started forming, you know, industrial districts and certain things to bring in jobs. But that also brought in a lot of warehouse spaces and a lot of parking lots and a lot of things like that. So just making sure that now we are looking to right those wrongs, working with cities, working with governments to make sure that they are acknowledging those wrongs and saying, yeah, we messed up here and we're going to do right by these folks.
And trees and paying attention to the green spaces that are there with hopefully creating more green spaces is really the best answer.
Absolutely. I think now the city has committed to bringing 5 new parks on here in Southside, 5 new parks that actually get to be created by the community members. And so one of the things that we're going to be working on is bringing walking groups through and saying, what would you like to see here? How do you want to feel in this space? What would you like to use this space for? And so that's a really exciting way that the city can say that, you know what, we do realize that we've had problems in the past and we're going to work to fix those.
We want to point out that, like, we're volunteers doing this. Like, this is not, an uphill battle in a sense where it's just like, you can't conquer this. Like, as long as you have folks who are committed to this cause, who want to get involved, who want to just say like, hey, I believe that my community also should have equitable access to green spaces, and I'm going to commit time and energy to making this happen. I'm going to knock on the doors of those in the halls of power to say, I am here, you cannot ignore us. These are the things that are achievable, and we want folks to know that they have the power of voice to make that happen.
It's so vital for the health of our of our neighbors. It's just an important step to take.
Absolutely. And if you think about, like specifically, in South Richmond, there are a lot of folks that rely on public transportation, right? And they might not have access to a family car. And so you're talking about some of the major corridors that have no shade. And so if you're thinking about getting off from a long day of work and then you have to travel to the bus stop, then you have to sit at that bus stop. There's no shade to keep you cool. You can go to neighborhoods, north of the river, and there are plenty of trees that shade the actual public sidewalks to get to bus stops.
And much cooler.
Much cooler. But on South Side, unfortunately, we have an issue with that. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to mitigate as well.
And I think people can identify it by parking their car in a parking lot on a hot summer day and take that analogy of the parking lot walk to somebody's living space and the importance that trees play. And I applaud you for what you're doing. So how do you choose the species of trees and how do you go about, fulfilling this mission of Southside Relief?
So the reality is, I'm not an arborist, right? But there are plenty of folks who are arborists and urban foresters, and we have amazing partners within the community. And so that's working with the Department of Forestry and their community foresters. That's working with some of our tree groups within the city. And we're always preaching right trees, right place, but also we need a diversity of species.
Yes.
And so even as you see here in this playground, we have, almost about 10 different types of tree species there. And for us, knowing that we are a community group, we know that our job is to be advocates and to be to be really hands-on when we're doing these projects. And it's okay to say, listen, I'm going to rely on the city arborist, right? I'm going to rely on the community forester to help us make sure that we have the right tree species and diversities throughout these projects.
So how can people get involved?
That is my favorite question, Peggy. So we love for community members to get involved. One of the ways that you can do that is by visiting our website. We have a list of all of the ways people can volunteer, get involved with tree plantings, get involved with any community advocacy, workshops, classes. We also have the Greening Working Group, which is another initiative we have here, where folks can really get into a deep dive into different topics like climate change, learning about trees, urban farming, other topics like that. And then also getting involved with their friends groups at their parks.
Yes.
So finding out the local park that's near them and then just pitching in and joining a friends group.
This is a wonderful program, and it's one that I can see will benefit a whole community and can be used as a model throughout the state and the country. And I applaud you all for initiating this grassroots organization that will truly make a difference as these trees grow and cool and save lives. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.